Hello, 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 hello. Today I'm talking with Jenny Martin. We talked about being the primary source of income for her family and what she learned from creating a gratitude log.
I'm Ivanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it.
Hello, hello everyone, and hello with me I have Jenny. Welcome.
Hi, everybody.
And before we jump even in, I want to show I'm recording this from Belgium, and this means I am at this point in Ghent or near Ghent, and you are in Hoek, if I'm pronouncing
Yeah,
it correctly.
that's right. Yeah.
Then it should move me there. That's in the UK, and I looked it up a little bit. The only thing I know a little bit near is Reading, if I'm correct. It's not that far. I don't even see it anymore now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. About half an hour away.
So
Yeah.
that's the only thing I know that's somewhere near that in that environment. And that means that time zone wise, here it's almost 5:30, and you're, if I'm correct, one time zone away. So you're 1 hour behind me, if I'm correct.
That's right. Yeah, it's nearly 4:30.
Exactly. So just to give a little bit people the context on where we are and how we are recording this, because that's the nice thing about recording online. It looks like we're together, but actually we're apart. Jenny, before we jump into the questions, what is a good way to, what should people know about you?
What should they know about me? I guess I'm passionate about people and kindness and fascinated by brains and individuals and how teams work together. I've been in the software development industry for about 25 plus years, but slowly gravitating my way back towards psychology stuff, which is where my roots are. I'm married to my partner only recently. We've been together nearly 30 years, but got married just a couple of years ago. I've got a son who's turning 16 next week. I'm very small, which you can't get from the video, but I'm only small. What else should you know about me? I'm happy to be here. Love collaborating. Yeah, collaboration is a big thing to me. So I'm also known as the collaboration coach on my YouTube.
Collaboration code.
Yeah,
That's a nice, how would I say it? Yeah, metaphor or nice name. It's not really a name, but it's still, I think it's really nice to have such a name to be known for. Um, I typically call myself, since a couple of years, creative collaboration agent for similar kind of things. Like it's like, yeah, it for me a lot is about, okay, how can I help people to collaborate better together?
yeah,
So in that sense, I really like that name. It's
yeah.
I already feel really connected there. So that's nice. Well, let's jump into these questions. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
Yes, I guess that's a bit related to what we were just talking about. So I just fell into technology back in the early 90s and didn't have any technical experience at all. I was a tester, and I ended up being kind of gobbled up by this consultancy company, American consultancy company, who sent me out to Dallas, and then I lived in Luxembourg for a couple of years and Dublin for a couple of years. So I guess what they didn't know about me was that I didn't actually have a technical background, and my background was in psychology and people. So for a long time, I felt a bit like I was winging it. Everyone around me all qualified with their various technical degrees, and me kind of not so much. So yeah, not properly qualified in anything to do with technology, apart from the boot camps and the training that I went through with the consultancy company that I joined, but very passionate always about what makes people tick. So it took me a while to kind of discover that and learn that about myself, that's what was going on for me.
And so does that mean that in a way maybe you held back in the first couple of years, or was that because you didn't feel, or it almost feels like you felt out of place, something? Is that, or maybe I'm exaggerating?
Yeah, I mean, maybe a bit like a fraud, or a bit like I shouldn't really be entitled to be there. So I was in a very male-dominated environment for all of that time, and also had a kind of leadership style that was very much based on motivating the team through trust and empowerment and kindness and, all of that stuff, which 25 years ago wasn't the sort of leadership style from people around me. So I guess it was a difficult kind of balance to be proving myself in that very male environment as being technically capable and, being assertive and being ruthless enough, which I wasn't, as well as having this soft side. So I felt like if I was seen as somebody who was a psychology graduate rather than somebody with a technical degree, then I might be underestimated or something like that.
But at the same time, you brought an extra skill that most people didn't have, but they didn't value it at that time.
Yeah,
And
I think so.
in a way, did you not value it in the beginning also? Did you not see it as an advantage? Or did that, or the world kind of told you it and you believed it? Or maybe I'm exaggerating, yes? I'm just trying to understand a little bit.
Yeah, I think, gosh, I'm already kind of reaching deep into what I think and believe. So I think it was difficult for me. I was quite assertive, quite confident, quite able to pick things up quickly. I got promoted into a leadership position very quickly and, selected out of hundreds of people in the organization to go to Dallas and all of these things. So I was sort of capable. But I remember in one of my earliest reviews I had that went well, it went really well. And my reviewer said to me, this is all going brilliantly, Jenny. Your team are doing really well. You're moving up really quickly in the organization. But he said to me, you'll never make a senior leader because you're not enough of, am I allowed to swear?
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, you're not enough of an asshole.
Wow, that's literally the words that they
Yeah,
used you.
yeah, literally.
So everything is fine, but because you're not, because you're too gentle, it's not okay.
Yeah,
That's
he was being supportive. He wasn't
yeah,
trying
I hear
to
that.
put me down. But yeah, so difficult to navigate, I think, to navigate sort of my natural talents and skills and strengths of being a good communicator, being empathetic, caring about people, being compassionate. Difficult to navigate that space as a woman without being seen as something or other, like, being seen as, I had people often say to me, Jenny, this is the business we're talking about, not the people. And I was thinking, yes, I know, and so it was tricky to navigate. And then, of course, being
So
over.
that means that although that person was supportive for you, he himself, because I assume it's a he, but maybe I'm wrong there, but he himself was also kind of wrong in not seeing that in a way. Although he
Yeah,
wanted to support you, his worldview was very, yeah, different than what we have today, or what I would use normal
yeah.
today.
Well,
That's
it was different back then, right? It was a much
mhm.
more sort of leave your emotions at the door, much
Yeah.
more kind of, you don't share things at work, you don't kind of share any and show any emotion. I occasionally showed emotion. I went through quite a difficult time, actually, after I had my son. Went through quite a difficult time, going back to work and having lots of scrutiny on me for suddenly being a mother, which was was quite strange.
Oh, that was on top of being a woman. Now you were also a mother, and then
yeah.
Okay.
And I was going through a challenging time where I was sort of standing up for somebody on my team, and always, this was in a new environment, but I'd always believed, do the right thing, not the easy thing, stand up for your morals, all of that kind of thing. I remember having some challenging conversations based on what was happening and getting really upset about it, and speaking to a colleague who was a friend, and being in tears. And I found out later that the colleague, who was a man, felt manipulated by me crying, like I was trying to persuade him to get my boss fired by showing my frustration. And so, yeah, this is something that I've become much more. It's all good learning, right? But it's something that I reflect on now. I wasn't even aware of it at the time, but recently I did a postgrad in the psychology of kindness and well-being at work, which I finished last year, and we explored all of these types of things, in terms of bias and toxic leadership, and natural sort of female characteristics and kindness, and what does that mean. And so now, being able to reflect on that, I can kind of see how that all played out when I was starting out.
Being in IT, you were probably, well, let's say there were not many women around you at that moment, I guess.
No.
So basically you had to figure it out on your own, and in that sense your colleagues also had to figure it out in a way that, like, they were not used to having you or having a woman around, and because of that all the problems were your fault and not their culture or whatever that was really at place.
Maybe.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, certainly not at my level or above. There was very few women. Yeah.
It's unfortunately this is a similar kind of conversation that I had with already many people here, or many women here in the podcast, because it's and some even worse kind of things that people say. It's incredible. Again, 25 years ago is not that long ago. So I would have assume things much better, and unfortunately I have the feeling, I don't know how you feel it, but I have the feeling that the last years things got worse again instead of going better. So that's although I think we did make progress since 25 years, I'm not sure where we are at this point this year.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not in that sort of, because I own my own business, I don't have to be part of any kind of sort of toxic culture or anything like that. So it's difficult to say, but I am involved in some EDI training at the moment, as a freelancer, and it's interesting hearing the lived experiences of women, and particularly people of color and things like that are still
Well, I
absolutely
think it's
prolific.
this week that a lot of big tech companies have said, like, okay, we want to do less investment in our diversity and inclusion programs and whatever. It's like, okay, we didn't even achieve anything with that. We just got the start of it, and now we're already going backwards or stopping that. It's very strange.
Very short-sighted.
But thanks for sharing. I think it is important also for women who are starting these days to know, like, hey, this is not me. It's more the environment. When did you, as a person, realize that it was not you, but more the environment and everything? Was there a particular moment when you realized that? Was that a person that helped you in seeing that, or?
I think it's this sort of conflict that I was talking about. So when I kind of left school and left university and went out into the work, I'd been to an all female school, an all girls school, and I just didn't believe in sexism. I just didn't believe it. I thought, well, that might happen to those other women, but that would never happen. That could never happen to me. And it's not very helpful to go into a situation and believe that you can't succeed, or believe that you're going to be limited, or reach some kind of ceiling. It's a really unhelpful stance to take. So I didn't believe it, just ignored it, didn't notice it, didn't just refused to kind of believe that would ever be a thing for me. And then had my son. And boom, just it was terrifying. Terrifying that the subsequent changes in people's behavior and what happened as a result of that. So I got a wake-up call, and learned loads from it. Just learned absolutely loads from those situations and what I was navigating at the time. But through the other end of that now, I think.
And did you reach out to other women or other people around you to look for support? You talked partially with your colleague, and that kind of backfired, made it even worse, I would say.
You talked about whether or not there were any women kind of to look at. There was one who was a role model, and there were plenty of people that supported me but didn't really do anything. But there was one other woman, and she sort of threw herself in to kind of mentor me and try her best to make sure that I was going to do okay. And she gave me some really valuable advice and supported me, and
That is at work, I hear. Were there people in your private, in your personal life where you could talk and share these kind of experiences?
Yes, lots of friends and things like that.
And did you realize then that it was not just at your work, that it was bigger, or I don't know. Did you, because I hear you feel supported, but at the same time at work probably not much changed there.
I don't know. I think it's there were layers of different things. It's difficult to know,
Right.
whether what you're experiencing is sexism, or it's just a narcissist, or it's just somebody who's an asshole, or do you know what I mean? It's difficult to know all of that.
Yeah, I understand. And well, especially now, 25 years later, it's a lot harder to look into that. But I'm trying to understand also a little bit the dynamics, also trying to see for other people in similar kind of situations, women or indeed people from color, like because I do think having a support network around you can help. But indeed, like you say, mentoring. I do think we should, once we reach a certain age, we should really help out the people who are new to say like, okay, this what you experience, this is not normal, and that we can help each other in that kind of sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because I was running some EDI training the other week, and I had, we'd shown some statistics, and we'd, looked at lived experience videos and had lots of discussions. And this was about race. And I had a young black man come up to me afterwards and say, "Oh, I didn't realize it was so bad. I don't like thinking that way. I don't want to believe that I'm being held back, or whatever, And I kind of said to him, yeah, absolutely, I get that from, I know I'm privileged to be white, but I said, I get that absolutely, but just leave 1% in your brain that the other person might be treating you in that way because of something else." And that was the only kind of sense I could make of it, but he seemed happy with that. But difficult to navigate.
Yeah, but I really like what you're saying, because indeed when we're too much worried about it, we might hold ourselves back. So acting as if it's not true might help us to at least go for what we expect the world to happen. But at the same time, we shouldn't be too naive. When things happen, we should realize what's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
And keeping that 1% in the back of our mind to like, okay, wait a minute, is this now normal or not? I think that's really valuable advice for people that say, okay, especially like what you say, if you grew up in an environment where you didn't see that at all because you were, that you felt equal, and in that way, if it's all women around you, then it is really, you don't see the differences. Were there any male teachers in that school?
Yes, yeah, quite a few male teachers. Yeah.
And for you, that well, it felt like very normal, like it was just yeah, there were no differences there.
Yeah, I mean, in my family as well, both my parents worked. My mum was a school teacher and a head teacher. She was probably earning more than my dad. You know, in the school that I went in, it was very encouraging and very kind of women can do anything, girls can do anything. And so, yeah, that was just my approach.
In a way, she proved it
Yeah.
in a way. So that's always helpful as well. Of course, I think that's yeah, indeed. Okay, let's move to that second question. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, what would have become of you? Do you have any idea?
So I think I probably would have ended up doing some kind of graphic design, something like that. So I nearly went to art college. I nearly went to art college. I did art A level and maths. And so a weird combination of kind of maths and art at the time was quite a weird things to have both of those. I also did another A level, but and so that was a bit of a decision whether to pursue that, and I didn't. So I still do lots of creative things now, but I think what I find myself drawn to and sort of when I feel in the zone is when I'm doing something which is a combination of figuring out how to do something in iMovie or Canva or, you know, something, but also having it look shiny and nice and creative. So it's a mixture when all of those things are at play. So I think I probably would have found myself doing that kind of thing. Yeah, something with a bit of an artistic edge to it. I certainly used to say, that, oh, I want to be in advertising or marketing or something like that without really knowing what
But it
the
was.
those things were. Yeah, but I think everybody used to say that in the 80s.
Yeah, somehow, and I think there's a lot of pop culture that was around these kind of, yeah, I
Yes, yeah.
think also in movies and other kind of things, I think, well, there was a lot of things on advertising and things there, so I can definitely see that. And if you look back at what you're currently doing, are you using your artistic creativity in what you're doing?
All the time now, just particularly in the last couple of years. So I've had a few sort of stages to becoming completely freelance. You know, I set up my own company about nearly 15 years ago, which was running training and workshops and that kind of thing. The training was around collaborative software development practices at the time. And it's taken sort of 10 years before I put down any permanent work. So for a while, I was working in a startup as well with really flexible, really flexible kind of working. And then I was working for an event company, working 3 days.
Wait, you go rather fast. When you say flexible working, what does that mean? Because it could go, is that flexible time? Is that flexible the kind of work you do? What does that mean?
So when I was working in the startup, at the exact same time I set up my company. So this organization I was telling you about with some of the challenges, I left there and joined a colleague in a startup practice on a much lower salary. But because there was only 4 or 5 of us in the company, if I got a training gig, I would just do it, right? So it was just like I can put all my offerings out there, and then when they come in, I'm going to do them because I'm not being paid, you know, what I should be paid because we're in a startup. And so I was able to do that for 4 or 5 years
And
and
that was
build
an
up.
official way of agreeing that you took less money because you wanted to start your own? Was
No,
that officially?
we were just mates, you know. I think all of us
Right.
were, because we wanted the startup to work, all of us were on a bit of a shoestring in terms of trying to make the company work, recognizing that we were all taking a risk and all, you know, taking a financial risk. And so based on that understanding, I had that flexibility and just, you know, the
Yeah, to
trust of the
do
team
these
around me.
kind of things.
Yeah.
And because if I understood correctly, I'm trying to make some links. You said this was after that previous experience, but that was also because you had your son already. That meant that, well, at that moment, money is more important than if you're alone. I'm exaggerating maybe a little bit, but yeah, on your own, you can say, okay, I take care of need less money. But if you want to take care of a child, you don't want to withhold money to
And
raise it.
so as well, the other thing in there is that I'm the only earner in my household. So I've always been the one earning the money. And so
So there is no partner who would support you while you were taking a job with less money. That's what you're saying.
So my husband, has never had a kind of reliable income. He's always been following me around
Okay.
while I've been consulting. And
so again, just like your mother, you're the more reliable income, the main income of this family. That's
the
what
only
you're saying.
income. Yeah.
The only income, right? That's
and so I've never been able to take any financial risks. And so the way that I set up my business, I was fortunate enough to do that in stages. And the first thing for 5 years was the startup, where I was able to run my training through some different organizations and sort of slowly build up my client list. And then I had a really flexible arrangement with a company called Skills Matter. Do you remember Skills Matter? Yay! So I worked at the CEO of Skills Matter, Wendy. We knew each other because they were running my training, or one of my training suppliers, if you like. I was one of their suppliers, and she asked me to join their scale up and just come in. And she said, "What job title do you want?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'll be head of people potential." So I had a really flexible 3 years with them, where I worked 100 days a year. So I had any 100 days a year in the year, as long as I kind of negotiated it. So I was able to run my training through them as a consultant and have other clients and be on payroll for 100 days a year. So that gave me longer to build up my client base. And so it was only when Skills Matter went into administration, which was in just before lockdown, that I didn't have a permanent job. And so from there, I've been building. I was consulting for quite a long time. And then the last 2 or 3 years, I've been just completely freelance.
That's a wonderful story on how you build it up and how you make these things, especially if you consider that you do that all while you're the main source of income for a small family. That's really wonderful because I also set up a business, but my partner was working, and so there was some kind of income at that moment. If I would have been out of money, we would still have some money. I'm not sure if it would have been enough, but at the same time, there would have been something. So and I think that's it's a big risk, but then it's also very nice if you can make it work and then see how you do it in stages, like you just described. I really like that. You take every stage, you take probably a next kind of level of risk, but to secure some kind of thing and then still build it. So that's kind of nice. And it's wonderful to hear that, to hear how you doing these kind of things. So in that sense, you say you're not in advertising, but at the same time, if you're having your own company, you're doing everything. So you do advertising, marketing in a way as well. So that is part of being a small company, that you have to do everything.
Yeah, and that kind of comes back to your question. So you were saying, do I get to do the creative stuff? So of course now I do so much content creation, video creation. I'm preparing for an exhibit that I'm doing at the Health and Wellbeing Conference in Birmingham, where I'm going to be doing my Lego Serious Play. I've got my own exhibition stand, so that's a very creative process. I'm launching a conference, which is a very creative process. You know, all of the materials for training or workshops is quite creative design, and so I'm doing a lot of that now. and I really enjoy it. So I do quite a lot the weekends because I'm just quite happy to skip into my office and, you know, do some nice visual stuff. It makes me happy.
It's a little bit the thing is, I think the work-life balance is important, but if you're working on your own company and you can do it, if it's giving you energy, these kind of things, it doesn't feel like work. It's like okay,
Yeah.
it just feels like I'm working, and it's always important to work both in the company and on the company. So
Yes. Yeah.
especially as a small company. Okay, let's move to that third question. What is your biggest challenge right now, and why is that a good thing, or at least the biggest challenge that you want to share openly on the internet, of course?
So I think I had to, you know, give this one a lot of thought. I think my constant biggest challenge is staying present and actually being in the moment. So I have a very, very active brain. I'm constantly thinking about what's next, constantly thinking about that, thinking about how to optimize and maximize everything, like the future, the conference, my work, my larder at home, the garden, you know, constantly trying to think about how to make something in front of me better. It's part of kind of who I am. So that makes it difficult for me I do yoga almost every day. And of course in there that's saying like, be present, be in the moment. I find it really hard. I'm thinking, right, I've got 15 minutes left and then I can do this and then I can do that. I have to, you know, I have to really slow myself down. And I become aware of this. My son said to me, we'd got back from holiday a couple of years ago. And I had started talking about the next one. And he said to me, you know, Mum, you're always in the future. He said, you're always putting yourself in the future. You need to just be in the present. Yeah. And I was like,
That's
well,
a real nice message to get from your children, that they're
yeah,
like, okay, it might be at the same time very confrontational, but yeah, it's nice that your children can give you some kind of feedback.
yeah.
um it's so yeah, and so why is that a good thing for you? Let's start with that
What
part.
to be, well, just to, it's a good reminder to do those things that connect you with the present moment. So I'd say it's a good thing because recognizing that it's a really fundamental part of well-being, actually. So one of the things I learned on my postgrad was about presence and gratitude and things like that. So we had to, all of the different interventions that we explored that lead to well-being, we had to participate in studies ourselves. So for example, my well-being was really good in terms of all the different scales. So I was a bit like, what am I going to get from this gratitude experiment? So for example, we had to keep a log every day of things that we were grateful for at the end of the day. And, you know, I noticed that I would say things like, you know, I'm grateful that my husband gave me a compliment, or I'm grateful that I've got such a nice garden to sit in, or I'm grateful that I had such a lovely long hug from my son that he instigated. And I think what that did was make me more aware when the things were happening, to linger in them and enjoy them in the moment and appreciate them in the moment. And so, having written one night,
Moment you kind of register it better, because at the end of the day you need to talk about it. Is
yes,
that a little bit?
yeah, exactly. So you
All
kind of like,
right.
oh, here's a moment that I'm going to be grateful for later. And so,
But that means you're also at the same time already in the future, because you're
yeah,
in the moment.
exactly. But what it did for me is my son would come over and initiate another hug, and I'd be able to just think, oh, I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this. I'm so lucky to have such a warm and caring son, and just let it linger and prioritize it. And you know, spending a weekend morning not getting up, but staying snuggled up with my husband and thinking, no, I'm not going to leap up and go and get on with 10 million things, because this is really important and nourishing, and I'm going to stay here and just stay here for an hour. And so it did actually influence my ability to make more room for those things that I was recognizing were things to be grateful for. Yeah.
It's really nice. That's yeah, it's wonderful. I've noticed when you say I'm always in the future, that's I would say already better than people who are keep living in the past. They want to rehash them. So if you're already
Yes,
thinking about the future, that's for me, I think it's already better because the past you can change, the future
yeah.
you can. But like just like your son said, being in the moment, that is actually much better to enjoy the things. And I do at the same time recognize how hard it is, especially again as if you own a company, you need to prepare for the future. You need to think about, okay, what does that mean, both financially, but also for your clients, what arrange things and yeah. So it's very tempting to not be in the moment. So and I think in this day and age, it's even more. We get distracted so much and not always being in that particular moment. So that's yeah, that's really wonderful. I want to move to that next question because it for me it feels also like there there is a lot of passion, there is a lot of drive in you. So you know what drives you, where that passion is coming from. You have a I would say a gentle voice, and you're not like it doesn't feel like what I would call a table jumper kind of passion, but at the same time there is a lot of passion, like you talked to before. So you know when that started or where that's coming from.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. I'm very interested in strengths-based things where you understand what comes naturally to you and what your strengths are and what you're good at and what you enjoy doing, and try and find more of that. But also the same kind of positive psychology science helps you understand other people better and your interactions with them and your relationships with them. So I'm a strengths coach as well. And this is something that we explored a lot in my postgrad. So yeah, I've done a lot of kind of thinking about how I am and what motivates me and what I'm good at. But also,
When you say strength coach, is that physical strength? Is that emotional strength? How should I see
yeah,
it?
so strengths. So things like, I don't know if you've done any strengths-based assessments like Gallup Strengths Finder,
Ah,
or
this kind. Yeah, okay.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
not the physical strength. That's what I was looking for. Yeah,
no,
okay.
no.
But
So it's
that's
to do with
yeah,
your personality and your, the things that you're
exactly.
naturally good at. And so I've done a lot of exploration around that, both myself, but I do work with teams about helping them find their strengths and each other's strengths. And so, and I also know quite a lot about personality science and where that stuff comes from and how inherited a lot of it is. So, what comes naturally to me in terms of empathy, agreeableness, understanding, wanting, I was talking about the maximizing, wanting to make something better. That's something which is naturally part of my personality that's come out in all sorts of different tests, is wanting to optimize and maximize situations, people, holidays, businesses. So I definitely know what motivates me. I'm not remotely ambitious, which is really kind of interesting. So those typical strengths of achievement and power and things like that is not what motivates me at all. It's much more to do with, I don't want to say helping others because that sounds a bit trite. It's more about being part of something where everybody is reaching their potential and flourishing, and whether that's an individual, whether it's me, whether it's a team. I need a lot of affirmation from other people to sort of function. So I need to be appreciated. I need to be valued. And I get really good feelings when I am able to help somebody else reach their potential. And so And so, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. Or partially in the sense that that you did a lot of that. Um, Part of the question for me is always like I'm interested to see, when did that start? Was there something in your life where you looking already at these things when you were young, or was there was there some role model who learned you some of these things, or?
So I think when I took psychology as a degree, I knew it was because I was interested in people and how people think. I didn't realize that I was a sort of compassionate, kind person until a bit later. I think when I was in the leadership positions I was telling you about, I used to have lots of people come to me and talk to me and give me feedback about having been there for them, or listened, or supported, or enabled, or empowered, or something like that. So I started to realize, kind of in my early leadership career. And then I was doing all of the training about collaborative software development and that kind of thing. And I did this Gallup Strengths test, and my top qualities were about positivity and about agreeableness and about individualization and maximizing potential. And it was a bit of a revelation to realize that the things that were motivating me, because the things that motivate you, you tend to be naturally good at, and you tend to not even know that other people don't have that, because it comes so naturally to you. It's difficult to understand that somebody else might not be like that. And so I sort of realized at that moment that I went to work with Skills Matter, when I'd been doing all of this. All of my roles up until then had been with some kind of delivery job title. And when Wendy at Skills Matter said, "What do you want to do here?" I said, "Well, I want to help the team reach their potential." And so that kind of was a moment where I realized, okay, this is what I'm about. And so that was about 10 years ago, maybe not quite 10 years ago. So yeah, that was a kind of definite noticing that actually what I'm doing here, whilst I've been in this software development environment, I've still been helping the team thrive and flourish. And that's been my job. That's been what I've been doing. And, just doing it in a more deliberate way.
And that's because of that that exercise that you did yourself at first. That's a little bit what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And by that discovering, like, hey, actually these kind of things, I kind of like that, and there might be more for me there.
Yeah.
It's really wonderful. I really like that. It's because it's also shows, because that's one of the things I sometimes feel when people have invented a certain methodology, they're good because they invented, but at the same time they've never done the training, so they've never been in the experience of doing it. And with you, it kind of came by doing the experience and then saying, hey, it's been valuable for me, maybe it can be valuable for others. I can translate it. And then you, if I can imagine, if you come into a situation where people say, hey, this is new for me, or this is whatever, you've been there, so you can kind of say, like, okay, I might have experienced it either the same or a little bit different, and you can use that experience, I guess, as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I think so. But also understanding other people. So I think one of the things that really interested me about all of the different strengths research is about how, when you're not at your best and when you're struggling at work, it's often to do with your strength coming out too much. So being too much of a communicator, or being too much of somebody who's good at organizing. And so there's a psychologist called Daniel Ofman, who, it's a good thing to look up, actually. It's a 12-minute YouTube video which talks about,
Okay, I'll add the video as well.
yeah,
I have
Daniel Ofman, Core Quadrants is the video, and he talks about our qualities as being these unique gifts from the universe that we have, our qualities. And he says, well, your overplayed strengths and your blind spots, you kind of get those for free. Yeah. So my strength of being trusting, which is a strength, I get for free being gullible. And so when we think about our relationships, we actually seek out people who have strengths that challenge us. So I will actually seek out somebody who's more detail oriented or more going to do something with a bit more rigor and science than my instinct and trust. I'd seek that person out. And when we're both exhibiting our strengths well, we're going to make a really good pair. But if I become gullible and that other person becomes nitpicky, then we start to fall out. And so one of the things Daniel Ofman says is, he says, if only we could see other people's, weaknesses, pitfalls as too much of their beautiful thing, then we could all be happier in the world. And so I do work with teams, helping them figure out those dynamics and helping them appreciate where this behavior is coming from and how useful that attribute could be to the team.
I really like that. I was thinking, but I probably don't find it. But I have somewhere an exercise with the 4 quadrants, because it's not the strength and the opposites, but there's 4 quadrants that play into each other, right? I keep forgetting the different kind of things. But yeah, the in Dutch kernkwaliteit, the core quadrants, I would say. I think that's how it's called. The challenge that you have, the whatever. Yeah, I've done this exercise a couple of times with coaches, and I've also done it with teams, and it's really wonderful to think about that in that way, because then people can really see, like, okay. And yeah, also as a team, it's really valuable. We looked into this kind of exercises also with a leadership team last year, and it was really good, like, to compare, well, the people in the leadership team, like, okay, where do these challenges help each other, and where could we help out each other, and it's like, hey, this is actually that opposite of that positive thing, that and it makes the conversations so much more positive in a way, because otherwise, if we talk about the negative side, it's always like, yeah, that it feels like people feel like, that there's some kind of critic, and this is more like, well, it's actually it's your good side, but that shows in a negative way. Okay, that it's the two parts of the same coin. So it's good to think about that, and what's the effect that has on other people, and vice
It's like
versa.
being,
So
assuming that people have good intent, I think, is something that I believe in, is a principle that I try and take forward, which means seeking to understand before seeking to be understood, which I think is something that I'm quite passionate about.
I've learned that from Dr. Covey. I like that quote as well. It's really helpful, and it's hard at the same time, because yeah, sometimes we're so tempted, especially in this polarized world. It's very tempting to forget that, and to yeah, even asking questions. I've noticed that I'm trying to ask questions online, for example, and other people are jumping in, or even in a coaching conversation, that, yeah, it's no, it's about questions to understand. I'm trying not to judge here, but somehow people feel judged much faster, and it's really hard, yeah, and or feeling judged. Yeah, so that's really wonderful. Thank you for sharing, because I think these are the kind of things that is really wonderful for people to get to know. Well, this is why I advise everybody to have a coach, to learn about yourself, to learn your strengths, your weaknesses, and how they play into each other, and how they can help you at work, or at home, because
At
it's
home as well.
that's really wonderful. So that, with everything that we discussed here, what would you consider your biggest achievement? And what I've noticed when I do this conversation with people, I realize basically this is a moment to brag. This is a moment to really be proud. Is that easy for you, Jenny, to be proud, to brag about stuff?
Yes.
That's
Yeah, I
fine.
think
That's
so. I think so. Yeah, I think so. But it's difficult to think about because I don't actually. It's not. I don't actually look back and think of a load of achievements. It's not something that I've really thought about. I'm proud of how we've raised our son. I'm proud of having, kind of what does my husband say? Keep the show on the road. He says I keep the show on the road. I'm proud of keeping the show on the road.
that's very. I really like that expression. It's really like
Yeah,
okay.
he says you keep the show on the road, and he's grateful for it. So I'm proud of that. In terms of kind of professional achievements, I've had one recently which has kind of blown me away. So, and it's why I'm writing my book. So I developed this kind of collaboration framework thing, which is what some of my training's been based on for the last 7 or 8 years, which is a technique called OOPSI, which is it's a collaboration framework. It's a conversation starter. It's a living documentation system. It's all things. And it was something I was talking about on the conference scene about 8 years ago, and it got a bit of a buzz, and then I got really busy, and then it sort of keeps coming back at me. I keep getting pingbacks from a blog I wrote 8 years ago, and then I found out somebody was using it in a big consultancy, which I won't say the name of, but top three, and that had actually done a comparison of OOPSI and example mapping, if you know what example mapping is, from Matt Wynn and Seb Rose, and they'd chosen OOPSI. And then I was in the hairdressers. I got pinged by Jeff Patton, and he
As you're in the hairdresser,
in
I
the
really
hair.
like that detail.
Yeah, just thought I'd share that. And I was looking at my phone. I got pinged by Jeff Patton. I was thinking, what's he pinging me for? Oh my goodness! And he said, I'm working with a big client who are a big mortgage lender in the States, and they're using OOPSI. And my client wants to talk to you. And then I was like, what? And so I'm thinking, oh, will they have time for me to speak to them? Will they have time for me to speak to them? Will he speak to me? Will they speak to me? And then when I actually eventually got on the call to them, he was like, I can't believe I'm speaking to you. I was like, what? And he showed me their implementation, which was basically my little methods underpinning their whole development and testing framework. And so,
Nice. And so what I want to stress out, it's not just that there's other people using it outside you, but it's on top of that, people are telling you about it. Hey, we've discovered that this client is using it, and so yeah, that's really nice because it means that the community is taking care of you and being sure that you know about these things.
yeah,
That's really wonderful.
yeah. And then I thought, oh, what if I go onto LinkedIn and I search for OOPSI, and I found it in lots of people's CVs. And then
Hmm.
I had somebody say to me that they'd interviewed somebody and they'd said, what approach do you take to deal with a complex problem? And they said, I use OOPSI. I was thinking, this is amazing. So yes, that's kind of been a real encouragement for me this year to actually
Finish the book, to actually finish, and but because that's even more amazing is that that method that you defined, people are using it, people are using your name with it without you, without written a book. So it's without you making a lot of marketing. You wrote about it 8 years ago, you gave some presentation, if I understood correctly, and then you kind of got busy. So I wouldn't say you forgot it, but you didn't do much with
yeah,
it, and it kept growing on its own.
yeah,
That's Wow, I really
I'm
like
feeling
that.
kind of proud of that at the moment. And I just had a session
So
today with a bunch of agile coaches in one of the communities that I'm in to sort of test it out on them, and I got some really great feedback and support. So yeah, that's something I'm feeling pretty good about at the
really
moment.
like that as well. So wait, I do want to try to see this.
Thank you.
It's I don't always do that, but sometimes I get like it. I really like that. That's that because for me, especially in the agile community, yeah, we've invented a lot of things, and sometimes things die because of the people who invented it no longer using it or no longer thinking. But this is a nice thing where the community is like, hey, wait a minute, don't forget about that. It's valuable. We want to keep using it, and so kind of in that way, also kind of supporting you and saying, hey, that's and so and not just supporting, they're really happy that you, the inventor of it, wants to make time for them. So that's a wonderful thing. I really like that. So yeah, really wonderful. Let's move to that next question. Do you have a personal agility tip to share?
Personal agility. So I've been given advice on personal agility, which would be do one thing at a time, right? Just do one thing.
Limit the work in progress.
Yeah,
Just
limit the
one
work
thing
in
at a time.
progress. But
And
I'm
not
actually
just limit it, but limit it to one thing.
limit it to one thing, right? But I'd be lying if I said that I could do that, because I'm
Yeah,
literally,
you said you think about all these
yeah,
things
yeah,
all at the same
exactly. So
time.
particularly since having a child, like if the kettle's boiling, I'm thinking, I've put the kettle to boil. Can I unload the dishwasher before the kettle boils? It's like and my friends say like I'm constantly doing something. If I'm boiling an egg, I'm like doing the next Ocado delivery, like literally constantly multitasking. So I don't actually live by that. Although
But at the same time, I'm interrupting because I hear a lot of people who invent these kind of things. They do invent it or they come up with things because they have a challenge themselves, and
yeah.
that's when you keep talking about it. It's also to keep reminding yourself, like, hey, there is value. Is that for you the same thing?
Yes, I think so. I do remind myself to do that. But I think a more authentic personal agile tip from me would be about listening. I think that's quite an agile thing, is to
Mm-hmm.
listen, and to listen and properly hear without being ready to speak, or getting ready to have an opinion, or getting ready to judge, or getting ready to give advice. It's something that it's taken me 30 years.
That's already, if you're already there, you're well ahead of a lot of other people, I would say. Yeah. Just today, I shared a meme with a couple of people that was also about that. Like most of the time, people don't need advice; they need someone to be present, just as they process whatever they need to do it, because they already know it. And it's again not always the same thing, but in many cases, that is helpful if there is somebody to listen to, and then ask a few questions to make sure that we understand them, and in many cases they understand themselves
Mm-hmm.
what they kind of already know. I don't know how that works for you, but that's sometimes what I feel. um, there are moments, of course, that people look for very specific advice when they're stuck. But I've also know that many of the people that we're working with, they do have an ID. They just want, yeah, they just want someone to listen to them so that they can figure it out. And so you say it took you 30 years. Did you do any training? What did you do anything to learn or to train it yourself?
I think it's a mixture. So when I was early in my career, I always had a sense, in my working environments, of knowing the answer, of trusting my gut, of being able to see what the solution was. And also I was trying to prove myself in this environment that I talked to you about, and have them see how capable I was, and all of this stuff, and wanting them to know. And so my brain at that point was naturally just kind of, I want to speak, 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 which was probably pointed out to me in various reviews and things like that. So I tried to work on it. But I think part of getting better at it is just a genuinely having less to prove and having more space. But I have done a lot of sort of active listening exercises and things like that I found really useful. And I think that it's almost been a kind of gift in the last few years, I think, in particular, to be able to listen and just abandon yourself to listening, which I find extremely nurturing, just to listen and allow opinions and advice and all of those things to just be put aside. And so I think it's a gift that you can give somebody else, is to just listen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also something which is good for your spirit.
And at the same time, it's something that, strangely enough, we don't really learn that in school. In school, well, they do expect you to sit down and to listen, but it's more to listen to repeat what a teacher said, not listen to understand it in a way, or at least that's how it feels to me. I don't know if, because when you say it took me 30 years to learn it, and the examples you just gave, these are all, or at least that's what I feel, they're all work examples. So it's not something that you said, oh, I was taught that in school, or this, like that, which is interesting, because we spent, like, I don't know, 12 to 15 years in schools, and where we have to listen a lot, and somehow most of us, we come out of it then feeling like, now it's my time to talk and I'm not going to listen anymore. It's a little bit what it feels to me. It's very interesting. But I like both of these things. Limit the kind of work that you're doing. I do recognize that, it's tempting to do many different things. But just for me, like here, I'm in this. I might be writing some things down because it will help me later on, to prepare the rest of the podcast for when I ask some questions. But my focus is fully on the podcast and writing and everything. My attention is fully there. I wouldn't be able to do, I don't know, accountancy or whatever at the same time. That would not work. But I do think that helped me a lot these 3 years, indeed, to focus and be in the moment with the people I am with. It's it's helpful, and it's really important. So thanks for sharing these things, because I think it's it's two very important tips that is really important for any kind of person, in any kind of role, independent of what you do, not just coaching or managing or even developers, everybody. It's really useful to do that. Let's move on to remote working. What have you learned about remote working? And maybe let's start with that. When did you start to do remote working? Was that during COVID that you all of a sudden had to do it, or did you do some remote working before?
Yeah, definitely before. So this startup that I was part of, that started in about 2011, we were all distributed across the country, and so we just did everything remotely, and it just worked really well. Worked really well for us. We did get together quite regularly, every couple of weeks. We used to, this is my office at the end of the garden, we used to come here and I'd bake everyone bacon sandwiches, and we'd cover the walls with whiteboard paper, you know, the paper that sticks to the walls. We'd collaborate. That worked really well for us. We used to co-create on Google Docs, and at the time we were using Slack and taking photos of what we were doing. So yeah, I had quite an experience of doing that before lockdown. I did think, though, because I was doing lots of in-person in my independent kind of world of training, and I was doing lots of training and workshops. And one of the things that's important to me about about those things, that's probably makes sense given what we've talked about, is having any training or workshops that I do be really engaging and experiential and collaborative and participative, where everybody's voices are heard and all of those things. And so I would have had a belief at the beginning of lockdown that you couldn't do all that remotely. And I would have just said, no, you can't do that. And then I ended up working for UCL, the university, and doing sort of like 1,000-person training days with them, all remotely, all on maere. Yeah, which was just totally reevaluated what's possible remotely.
So you re-looked at yourself and you realized, like, okay, there is actually more that there is some more than what you originally thought was possible.
And in terms of what I learned about that, I learned that virtual sticky notes don't fall off a wall.
I love that. But that is so true, because indeed there is depending if we use super stickies or very cheap stickies that sometimes clients buy, even with the bigger ones, they sometimes fall. The cheaper ones, they might fall a lot more, and then you spend a lot of time picking them up and trying to figure out where is it. And remotely, that's not the case. It's there is much more. I never thought about that. I mean, that's really wonderful.
And then in my community of facilitators, because I've got quite a lot of large network of colleagues and friends and things in facilitation, and so I've learned a lot about the difference in facilitation between remote and in person, and how important it is to bring people in gently into a session, and how hard it is to hear all the voices, and how hard it is to warm up the conversation and deal with all of those stuff. So I've done a lot of learning in that space about remote workshops. I do think it's been quite disarming, the remote working for people, which I think is a real plus. I know we're kind of back to hybrid now, but certainly during lockdown, I found the babies on the knees and the dog barking in the background and the Amazon delivery arriving and the bin men coming and all of those things happening, disarming for people and breaking down that barrier between work life and home life, which I think has been really good in terms of people being able to show up as themselves rather than something else.
I like that you stress that, because it's indeed, before at work we might know that somebody has a child, or that he or she has a dog or a cat or whatever, but now we actually see the animals. We might see a child walking in, hearing them scream, whatever. Sometimes as a person, when it happens to me, I might feel embarrassed, but actually, like you say, the rest of it, they don't care. It's like, no, that's fine. Actually show off, and so we see each other much more as humans at that moment.
Yes,
we also see a little bit into each other's homes, so we learn a little bit again about it, so that's I really like that you stress that, because it's something that I feel indeed we have lost now that we're going back to more hybrid. There is, first of all, less people at home, but during lockdown everybody was at home. So now I might still be working from home, but I might be the only one at home. So there will be less. Okay, if there is a delivery, I will need to take it, but before it might be someone else who could take it. But other than that, there is less interaction with the family or with whatever's happening at home. And so I do feel that we lack a little of that. And that's really wonderful to mention that. And do you discuss this with clients? That thing, was that for, because now you say it here, and I had that feeling already as well. Is that something that you use to your advantage for remote classes and other things?
I don't know. I guess it's a shame. I've got a love heart light that is on the wall behind me, which I normally have, but it fell off at the weekend. It fell off. It's nano leaf lights. They kind of all light up and show all these different shapes. So that's a nice kind of way of showing your kind of in your personal space, making it something that reflects you. It fell off in the cold. It's something I've talked to with clients. Sometimes I have clients and they're frustrated because they feel like they've got a lack of engagement in their online meetings. And then it surprises me that they haven't heard of things like breakout rooms, and that they're not using some of the functionality that there is to actually get people talking and, you know, make it easier for people to collaborate. So it's definitely something that needs design, and so I sometimes talk about it.
Okay, that's wonderful. And yeah, it's a shame that things happen, but again, that's part of things happen at home as well. Sometimes there is something that's no longer working or that is different, and that is yeah, that's also part of it, of course. That's thanks for sharing that, because that, I think that's also an important part of looking into each other's lives. That, oh, you had a sign there, and when people see it, oh, today you don't have it, like, okay, what happened? That's also a little bit the thing. Thank you for sharing that. Let's move to that next question. What is a book that you wanted to talk about?
So I wanted to talk about a book that I guess I read back in about 2010, something like that, maybe 2009, by Gojko Adzic, called Bridging the Communication Gap.
And that should be the book.
Yes. Yeah.
It was also the first book from Gojko that I read. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Why
it's
should
just,
people read it?
so I mean, he's written other books since then, obviously Specification by Example being kind of the main one that followed. But for me, it was just, I felt like when I read that, somebody else out there feels the same as me. You know, it felt like, oh my goodness, like the power of this collaboration, you know, that actually believing in people co-creating and working together and actually talking things through and noticing the gotchas and the things that would come back and bite you as rework, and catching that up front. And because my early experience was, my early consulting was a test manager, so I had to put in place testing practices, and I grew the team of testers, and then I took on the analysis function as well, and then the development function in a big delivery role that I had. So having been a tester and knowing what it feels like when something's really ambiguous in the way that it's written, or, you know, all the things that haven't been thought about in terms of using real world data and actually running a test haven't been thought about when they've been writing the requirements. It made so much sense to me. It was a huge aha moment. And so, yeah, that kind of led me then into all of those collaborative practices and championing them, and building that in to the testing that we were doing. We actually got Gojko in when he was writing Specification by Example, which came afterwards, and our team did the training in that. And so I think we were quite early adopters, which is why how I found my way into Oopsie, and, you know, all of the training that I do around trying to bridge those gaps. So yeah, and
yeah,
still
so
problems.
it triggered you in many different kind of ways. That's
Yeah.
indeed. Yeah, to be honest, I read the book, but like you said, it's more than 10 years ago, almost 15 years ago, and so I would need to relook at it. But it's a book I've advised to many people, and then many of the next books he written. Yeah, all the other ones, even the Humans versus Computer book, it's just wonderful.
Yeah.
With examples of yeah, how whenever you turn something, yeah, how computers can make your life harder. Let's
Yeah.
put it like that. It's wonderful how he always comes up with yeah, new ideas on looking at things, and
Yeah.
at the same time it's not new ideas. It's like, yeah, this is the world around us, and he's find a very good way to describe it. So yeah, a big
And
fan.
it's the bridging the communication gap is still challenges that teams have, like most teams have. So when I run my product development training, we do this warm-up exercise where I get everybody to build a Lego model, because I'm a Lego Serious Play facilitator as well. I get everybody to build a model that represents some kind of pain in their team, so some kind of agile pain or pitfall or something, just their concept. And then they build these models together into a shared model of their pain. And it's really useful for setting the scene and exploring the challenges that they have, so that when we're looking at techniques to bridge the gap, you know, that we can point to the model and talk about it. And it seems to be a universal metaphor that teams represent in Lego, which is a bridge. And so almost every time I do this, somebody will build a bridge with different, you know, with the business on one side and, you know, the engineering team or product team or the other, or a massive wall between them and facing the other way. And so it's such a universal challenge that teams face, which is really interesting, just breaking that bridge down. And so as we go through the training and we look at these collaborative approaches, we go back to the model and say, can we take the wall down? You know, can we connect the bridge? Can we bring people closer together? You know, what have we achieved? And then the other universal thing that they always do, I say always, mostly comes out, is somebody up on a big pillar facing the other way with a crown on. And that always represents some kind of stakeholder or somebody in charge who's elevated and facing the wrong way. So those two things seem to be really universal in terms of team challenges. I must have run that 50 times and always had the same representation come out. So what Gojko was saying 15 years ago is still
relevant. Like I said, I haven't looked myself again at the book, which I probably should. That's a big part of it. Always learning new books, that I sometimes also want to re-look at some of the books I've read like 10 years ago. But I do still recommend the book to a lot of people. It's one of the books that I gave as present at some point as well to people, because I think it is indeed an important part to bridge the communications and yes, and like you say, it was his first attempt, is maybe a strange word, but his first things about example and testing and I think there was a lot there already. It was better in that next book, or there was, but this one was already it blew my mind when I read it originally. So yeah, thank you. Really happy that we can that you brought that book, because many people sometimes talk about all the new books, but we sometimes forget about all the old books that we have read and have
and
learned
I think
us some things.
One of the key things about that book, you know, being when BDD practices were emerging, and I don't know if you see this as well, but there's so many anti-Pattons and teams that are struggling because they're focusing on the tool or the automation, and they've missed the principles about the conversations and about the examples and about the understanding and about the ubiquitous language. And so for me, that's where all the value is, and it's useful to go back to that, because it's so clear in there without talking about tooling, which can be a trap.
Thank you for saying that, because indeed it's something that somehow I think in our industry or in agile, we somebody comes up and says, oh, it's about communication and it's about talking and blah blah, and then at some point somebody creates a tool for it and says, now it will come easier, and somehow then people forget again that they need to talk to the other side. I mean, we did that with stories, we have that with this part, we have that with BDD, we had that with so many different it's always the same kind of thing, that we keep having people, and it's not that these tools are not interesting, but using the tool as a replacement for communication is never the solution. It's a combination, if or just the communication, because that actually is much better than just a tool, if you have to choose one or the other. I really like that you stress that it's really important. I want to move to that, for me, one of the most interesting questions, especially after conversations like that, where, we dive into many things that really interesting for me. What's a question do you think that I should also ask you, and what is the answer?
Okay, so given my recent postgrad, I'd like the question to be, what makes a high-performing team?
What makes it? Because now I'm really interested to learn what you feel that makes a high-performing team.
So I don't have all the answers. I feel funny about answering it now. But I guess, you know, we talked about my beliefs and my sort of leadership style and stuff like that when I was starting out, and you know, things have definitely changed. And one of the things that was really fundamental in terms of the postgrad that I just did is exploring all of these things around well-being, and how important well-being and your basic psychological needs are, having them met, how important they are in terms of flourishing. So, you know, there's loads of positive psychology science around this, from basic human needs kind of analysis and determinist self-determination theory, things like that go back to the 70s. Dan Pink's book in 2012 about drive, about the difference between extrinsic motivation in terms of fear, reward, money, and intrinsic motivation, which is much more to do with having a sense of achievement and, you know, all of those things. And so I've really explored that recently. And one of the models that we explored, which I quite like, is the PERMA framework, which I'm not sure if you've heard of.
I don't think I've heard of it.
So there's a positive psychologist called Martin Seligman who invented the term positive psychology. Just taking a step back, positive psychology is everything about the exploration of flourishing, whereas psychology before that was about fixing people. So there's,
Right, yeah.
you know, the difference. And so that kind of came about in the 90s. And all of these different strengths interventions and gratitude and things like this sit in this positive psychology around flourishing rather than just fixing. And so the PERMA model I quite like, which stands for, P stands for positive emotions, E is engagement, R is relationships, M is meaning, and A is accomplishment. So if individuals feel all of those things, you know, they're happy, they're engaged with what they're doing, so they're playing to their strengths, they're engaged with what they're working on, they have good relatedness and belonging and relationships with the team, that they have a strong sense of meaning and purpose and are aligned to something, and also they feel a sense of accomplishment and achievement, those things are going to lead to a happy team. And you know, an engaged team, a motivated team is a high performing team. So
When you say that, because when you talked about the the 5 things in the PERMA model, it felt, I thought first about personal things, but now you bring it up to team level. Is that both part of the model, or did I just look at one part that is not there, or how should I see it?
yeah, so it applies in all contexts. It was originally developed as a personal thing. There's a PERMA +3 measurement scale that you can look at, which is for the workplace. It includes things like health and environment and things like that. But you can literally measure. I've got measures that I've got from this course. You can go and assess the different levels of PERMA in an environment, and you might notice that a team is scoring really low on meaning or accomplishment, and that would definitely be something to work on in terms of that team feeling more motivated. And so I see motivation as a direct link to high performance. And we talk a lot about psychological safety, knowing that that is a really important factor in terms of team performance. And it's, you know, this stuff is completely intertwined in there. So you know, compassion and understanding are to do with relatedness. appreciating your team and, you know, encouraging good behaviors. You know, those things are all about accomplishment and positive emotions, positive environments. You know, you can basically unpack well-being models and see how much they apply in terms of relationships and team dynamics.
So definitely we'll look into that to learn some more. Thank you for sharing it, because it's something I think many of us were looking when we're working with teams, how to help them. And yeah, it's like you say, psychological safety. We're already looking into that. That we know that it helps. The intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation is really an important part as well. I've seen it with teams. I've seen it with my own children, and when I did things that were not helping them, trying to motivate, which is then focusing on the extrinsic motivation, that didn't help at these kind of things. So yeah, really looking forward to learn more about that. So thank you for bringing that on. Let's move to already that last question. Who do you think I should ask next? And I know that you have a couple of names that you wanted to bring out.
Yes, so Liz Keogh has to be mentioned, given I've done so much talking about collaborative practices. We were talking about how important the principles.
This is Liz, for the people that don't know her, the few people that don't know her.
And
say some more, because I'm a big fan of Liz.
And she would say, so, you know, we were talking about the importance of the principles of BDD around conversations, and she would be you know, agreeing with that, and her work's been really important in terms of the understanding of BDD practices. She's also kind of awesome and interesting and quirky, which I love. I haven't met her for years, actually, since I was working on my oopsie stuff, but it'd be natural to bring her into this. I'm not sure else who you've got on your list who I
let's show a little bit the different kind of pictures. I want to wait, I need to switch to another screen. Actually, one of the other person that you invited that I've had already talked to is Gitte. So that was for the people who were interested. It was the 7th conversation I recorded. No, not that I recorded, that I put online. And then this is the other person you wanted to talk to. Who's this?
So this is Kerry Newton Saraga, and she is just extremely interesting to listen to. So her background is as a teacher. She's a coach. She works with agile teams. She's a behavioral scientist, and she's also studying neuroscience, a master's in neuroscience.
Wow.
And she's, you know, extremely. I was actually listening to a podcast from her earlier today, and it was just kind of amazing to hear her insights. And I'm also, you know, I mentioned I'm writing a book. Kerry's writing a book as well, and we're doing it together in the open, asking each other these questions.
Wait. You're both writing a different book, right?
Yes,
that's what I'm hearing. So should I see it like you're writing and you're in a video call with her, both writing, or just sharing some stuff? How does that work?
So what we've done is we've kind of figured out that we both want to talk about a framework, a playbook, something that is a kind of tool for others to use. Hers is a completely different thing. Hers is called The Worry War, and mine is Oopsie. But we figured out the structure of our books is pretty similar. We figured out that we both want to write books and that we've been perfectionists and not got around to it. So we've set up a series of Zoom calls where we ask each other questions, and they're going to form the different chapters. So each Zoom call every 2 weeks is a different chapter in the book. And so we're putting each 2 weeks, we're putting out a video as well of our clips of our session to kind of keep us honest, so that we keep to the timings. And we've also got a lovely friend of mine, Sam Carpenter, who's a visual thinker, and she's taking visual notes as we go, which we'll use for the books. So it's good enough. Our whole approach is that we do it iteratively, good enough.
But every 2 weeks you're talking, but you're talking about both books at the same time, or
Yes,
you?
yeah. So we've got 2 hours every 2 weeks. I ask her questions for an hour, and then she asks me questions for an hour, and Sam captures the visual
Wow,
thing of
it's
it.
wonderful, and it's yeah. I'm always I'm a big fan when people find or create a support channel or a support network around them, and this is what's yeah. Just like when people run more when they run with others, like okay, you're not writing together, but at the same time you are supporting each other.
Yeah,
You are working, so it keeps the pace, it keeps everything. I love this. This is really wonderful how you support each other. That
yeah,
does mean that the books are probably going to come out more or less at the same time. So
yeah,
you will be competition, but at the same time, it's about different kind of stuff. So
yeah,
I guess
totally
it's
different.
not.
Yeah, yeah. So we're doing this. It's going to be done by June, and it's going to be good enough. So literally, we're recording the Zoom, the different sections are all the different parts of each chapter. We then use Otter AI to transcribe that into text, chunk it, munge it down, chapter 2, and then some visuals from the call, and then on to the next one.
So so where will is it possible already for the people who listen here to subscribe to the book, or in a way to get a mail when things get
Oh,
out, or
I
how
guess
the?
there could be. It could be. So we're posting on LinkedIn is just a clips of us laughing and the process. So not so much of the content of the books, but just the silliness that's going along with it and the moments that we're having together and sort of charting our progress. And then I'm doing a little video, a shorts kind of style video every 2 weeks, and making sure I get the video done before the next session. So that's a real motivator for me. I love making the video and I love the attention, the endorphins from LinkedIn, right? So that's a massive motivator for me. But I'm not allowed myself to do the video until I've done the chapter. So I'm kind of saying, well, I can't release the next clip to everyone who's giving us support with us being silly until I've actually written the chapter, because in the post I say chapter 2, good enough, boom. And I have to get that done first, otherwise I'm not allowed to do the post. So
Again, it keeps you honest. Yeah, you look really for your own support system to
yeah,
keep going, to keep doing that.
yeah.
So yeah, I'll
And then
definitely yeah, I'm interested already in reading both books just to see how you support each other in this. That's
yeah.
really wonderful.
I had Kent Beck repost it to his 60,000 followers, which was like, whoa, that's a bit of extra, just a little bit of extra pressure.
Well, Kent is really good at supporting
Yeah,
others in the community as well. So yeah, that's but now you have indeed a little more pressure talking about extrinsic motivation. I'm not sure,
yeah,
but it feels that you have already enough intrinsic motivation to keep going, getting you and finding a way. So yeah, indeed, that puts it. But I would say thank you, Kent, because it might help every little bit. Let's say okay. And you had one last person that you wanted to bring, and that's this person.
yes, Valerie. So she's an agile coach. I met her at Agile Cambridge this year, I think, and Agile Bristol or even Scotland. And she's just doing some wonderful stuff around clean language and coaching. And also, she was really kind to me. So when I turned up in Scotland to do my talk at Lean Agile Scotland, Valerie's Scottish, and she'd made a load of bracelets, and she asked me to choose one just to take as a gift. And I chose one which said "Ochai the New" on it, which is the Scottish kind of way of saying hi, how are you? And I wore that home. And so yeah, I haven't known her very long, but I know she's doing great stuff in the agile space and would be a great person to speak to.
She had been already invited by Charles de Maere. So yeah, we still haven't recorded anything. So this is just an extra push, an extra
Yeah,
question
yeah,
to bring her on. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for bringing these three, well, four if you count Gitte, wonderful women to have more recordings. So thank you for that. It's been a wonderful conversation and to have this on a Friday evening with you. So first of all, thank you very much for that. And if people want to reach out to you, what is a good way to connect with you?
So the best way would be LinkedIn. So that's the one that I'm on all the time. I also have a YouTube channel. I'm not sure if I gave you that. Yeah, YouTube channel, which is the
I don't
collaboration
think
coach. No, I don't think I gave you that. It's fine. You
I'll
can
add
find
it in the show notes if you can
Yeah.
give it later to me.
And then my website, which is thecollaborationcoach.net. But yeah, really LinkedIn. If you want to get me, LinkedIn is the way. To
LinkedIn
get me.
is the
So that's
best
good
way
enough. You
to
can find all the
to-
other links from there actually.
And I think there was something else you still wanted to talk about a little bit that didn't come up now. If I'm correct, you still wanted to talk a little bit about this.
Yes. So yeah, quickly
and that's the link for the people that want to learn. So what do you want to tell about this?
So this is an event that I'm organising in March. It's in Neurodiversity Week. So it's on Friday, the 21st of March, which is Neurodiversity Week. And this is a conference, it's not for profit. So myself and my friend Jane Livesey are organising this because we have a passion for creating spaces and learning experiences and training and where everybody thrives and can be heard and can feel like they belong. So it's about sharing practices, facilitation practices and techniques that help create this sort of safety where everybody can contribute. And so we've got an incredible lineup of speakers that are either facilitation experts or neuroscience experts or have neurodivergent lived experience and lots of good stuff to share. And we're getting together in London and it's going to be awesome. And we're taking loads of risk by doing it because we're
Why you're
paying
taking
everybody.
because you're
So
paying for everything.
we're just saying this is what we want to do. We're just crossing our fingers and hoping we have the ticket sales to cover the event fee and the speaker costs and everything. But you have to go big or go home, right? Is one of the things we say. So we're just really, really excited about it.
So I'm happy that I still brought it up. I'll definitely put the link in the show notes. I do have some people in Belgium where I worked on inclusion and diversity, so I will definitely bring you in contact with them as well. I'm pretty sure they might be interested. I have no idea how their agenda is, but they might be interested in joining at least. So thank you very much for your time. It's like I said before, it was really wonderful. I'll add these links that you just talked about. If you, if you then later maybe send me the YouTube channel just to make sure that I don't link the wrong channel, and then I'll add all of that in a couple of weeks when this is going on. So thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, and you. Thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Glad to hear. See you.
See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.